Joining me now, Washington Post and Cornblue president of American Bridge and former spokesman to Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, Rodell Molyneux, and Americans for Tax Reform, Mattie Duppler.
Well
Good morning.
Well,
we'll see. The Duppler radar is here. I want to get to Detroit, and we're going to have a Detroit conversation, a longer one. But I want to quickly, you wrote about cracking the glass ceiling, and you have this great book about this. Nancy Pelosi was not interested in cracking that glass ceiling in 2008. She was a Barack Obama person through and through, because for her it was about pure politics, and she was never a Clinton Democrat.
Right, and not at the presidential level. She was happy to crack the dome, as she called it, of the Capitol herself. Right. Now, she did say she was neutral in the beginning in 2008, but everybody knew.
Behind the scenes, she was actively working to help Obama.
But I think, look, she's a pragmatist. She always has been. She's looking at the landscape right now. There are a lot of women, a lot of Nancy Pelosi supporters who think whatever they thought of Hillary Clinton in 2008, they've changed their minds in the time since then. You know, Joe Biden, of course, has to keep this out there that he might run. He doesn't want to actually be a lame duck.
I think he's trying to prepare. Well, it's not just that. I think he's preparing in case she doesn't run.
And in case she might not run. Absolutely. But it sounds like he's pretty practical, too. But look, you look at all the numbers. Yeah. You look at the dangling that Hillary Clinton is doing, that she's likely to do this. And Nancy Pelosi, I think, would be a fool, even no matter what her personal feelings are, not to at least say what she said.
Rodell, I still am stunned. The massive rush to endorse Hillary so early by Democrats today. What do you make of it?
Well, I think there are a few things. I mean, one, of course, President Obama won the primary back in 2007, 2008. There were a lot of people over this last 8 years that have been waiting for this moment. So I think she starts in a position that no one else starts, including
So do you think politicians are being pragmatic, going, well, geez, the train is leaving the station, I don't want to get left behind as a Democrat?
Had not for this force that is Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton might very well be the president today. So I think that there's almost in some people's mind an inevitability that she is going to run and that she will be the first woman president.
Mattie, history does not show a candidate with this kind of support this early, being a front runner this time, still getting to the presidency. This sort of, I mean, it would be, people are comparing it not really since Eisenhower has there been this consensus where Republicans acknowledge, boy, it's all about figuring out how are we going to beat Hillary or Democrat, You look at this Hillary train, and what do you say as a conservative?
Well, but I think the question that hasn't been answered is who's excited about a Joe Biden presidency, who's not excited about a Hillary presidency. I don't see where that constituency
let's move away from the Biden thing. This is about Hillary. How do Republicans deal with this Hillary phenomenon?
Well, I certainly think that Hillary will be the most formidable Democrat candidate that we'll have to face. And I think there's a variety of reasons for that, but the number one reason is she doesn't have the liability of a presidency that she's been shackled to over the previous 4 years. Look what's happening in health care right now. The president wants to delay half of his health care law. Joe Biden has to own that, and right now, heading into 2014 even, we don't know how health care is going to play on our side of the aisle. We don't think it's a very viable issue for Democrats, and Hillary has the advantage of not having to defend that.
All right, very quickly, Peter King's attack on Rand Paul, candidacy for president. What do you make of it?
As someone who comes from the more libertarian side of the movement, who doesn't think we need to be imperializing the rest of the world, don't think it's going to gain a lot of traction.
Fascinating to hear. Peter King's motivation is clearly, it felt like he had this is a one-track thing, and he's like, I'll go on a suicide run to destroy Rand Paul.
And what a fascinating debate for the Republican Party to be having about national security. I'll watch that anytime. It's an incredible conversation.
Yeah,
and we're talking about all this rush to Hillary. If Hillary does run, she will have there'll be some fairly well-known Democrat that does it. But all this action is going to be watching an ideological, but really philosophical debate inside the Republican Party.
Yeah, and listen, I think the Peter King thing is, it's about national security, it's about Sandy, but I think it's also about, Peter King is trying to talk for the, I don't even say moderate, let's say the sane part of the Republican Party.
Well, it's that northeastern Republican business wing. I think is probably what it is.
Fair enough.
The Wall Street one.
But Republicans didn't blink on defense sequester. They're willing to have this debate.
Very interesting. We're going to talk Detroit. Less than 10 minutes from now, live right here on MSNBC, we expect to hear from the governor of Michigan, Rick Snyder, the emergency manager of Detroit, Kevin Orr, about the city filing for Chapter 9 bankruptcy. Let's bring back the Gaggle and Cornblue, Rodell Molyneux and Mattie Duppler. Okay, guys. Rodell, I want to start with you. This Detroit bankruptcy, is this going to be the beginning of that larger conversation about cities and states who are worried about long-term debt issues on pensions, and it sort of becomes a come to Jesus moment for, say, public sector unions and city government to say, we've got to deal with this crisis.
I think so, and I think that there are some who are going to use this as an example of needing to talk about these issues. You know, that being said, your government, you made promises to your people, and I don't think that can be swept under the rug. I understand why Detroit is going through what they're going through right now. This has been a long time. Coming. But I think that especially on the pension side,
right,
if you're making these promises, you need to, as a government, try to, in the best faith, keep those promises.
Mattie, is it pretty clear that fiscal conservatives see this as an opportunity to exploit a problem? And I say exploit, I'm not trying to be pejorative, but basically say, this is what we're talking about all the time, right, government overpromise.
No, this has to be starting a conversation on municipal bankruptcies, because Detroit is just going to be the first story in a long line of the exact same tragedies. I mean, Chicago has this exact same problem. We're looking at tens of billions of dollars of unfunded liabilities. Some estimates put nationwide the unfunded liabilities at the municipal level, state and local level, as much as $2 trillion. It's a huge problem.
And the stunning thing to me is the lack of Washington involvement. Like, we could both imagine here a scenario where 3 months ago a Detroit leader would have said, you bailed out the banks, you bailed out GM, why don't you bail out Detroit? And nobody did that.
And I think, and what's remarkable about that, I think, is that it may actually mean that it's not the beginning of a big trend. That Detroit, because it's been so long coming, it's an isolated case. You can buy a house for $7. I mean, everybody has known for some time this was going to be the case, and that it's in its own category. I have to think maybe that's the explanation for it, because it's hard to see city after town collapsing around the country without that starting some kind of real Washington conversation.
Well, we shall see. Shameless plug, Van, go.
The Washington Post's great polling director, who also happens to be my husband, is going to be the first vice president of research for the Pew Center. He's had a great track record. Very proud of him.
All right. Well, now that's our second favorite poll here at NBC.
My friend Jamal Simmons, and Detroit native. It's his birthday tomorrow, so I wish him a happy birthday.
Oh, all right. And I know Jamal, I've been watching his tweets. It's been good to follow.
Speaking of Michigan, 42 days until the start of college football. As a proud Wisconsin Badger, I'm looking forward to it and getting off this debate on municipalities.
Well, cut Michigan some slack. Everybody's going to be rooting for Detroit now. We're all go Miggy Cabrera. That's it for this edition of the Daily Rundown. Hopefully